what I'm beginning to realize from my own story of rejection and from my own friends' experiences of rejection in high school when it comes to relationships or whether it comes to friend groups, I'm beginning to realize that every story of rejection is different. But what I'm beginning to realize here is that the partial contributors that lead to someone getting rejected from a friend group is practically based on a lot of superficial reasons. All right? As I said, every rejection story is different. How it occurs is obviously different. But let's say, for example, this friend tries to join a new friend group, for example. Some random friend out there joins a new friend group, but this friend group has a little bit of a different interest. All right? Let's say this friend tends to approach things more differently. They're more shy, and they like to jump into complex topics and text people more. Like, let's say they're not conventionally fit like someone who's like a chat for that example. The problem is they can get rejected based off of arbitrary social discomfort. The reason that I say this is that if this friend here loves to text people more often, if they love to jump to certain types of topics a friend group doesn't like to jump in, if they like to do things a friend group doesn't like to, the problem is the friend group might end up calling them and labeling them a creep and then rejecting them because it's based off of an aesthetic for social comfort. I'm saying this because it's apparent in many friend groups in high school. Not all of them, obviously. Not all of them are. I'm just saying, like in the ones where it does, what I'm beginning to see here is that this is arbitrary. The reason they're rejected is based off of social comfort, not actual or rational critical thinking. I use John Locke thinking right here. In order to reject someone from a friend group, you have to have verifiable evidence to prove to them that they are someone who shouldn't be in your friend group. Right? If they leaked a secret, for example, if they said something bad about you online, that's a reason. If there is verifiable evidence to prove them as such, then they should be rejected. Because otherwise, simple labels such as creep, quote unquote, or let's say someone who's misunderstood or uncomfortable, quote unquote, these are arbitrary. You have to have something in order to prove to them that they are not a person that should be in. Right? What I'm beginning to realize from this is that after looking through the ideas of rejection of this group, my own story and through my own friends' stories, is that through the Enlightenment authors, I'm beginning to realize that arbitrariness and tyranny, they are not limited to just history books or history lesson or the past monarchies. Like John Locke and all the Enlightenment authors, they all exist today. Tyranny and forms of it, they still exist today. Or that being friend groups rejects people without a verifiable rational reason. When it becomes to parents who think that they're always better than their kids or who think that they're always right, that's a form of tyranny. It essentially means that arbitrariness and tyranny exist where there's no critical thinking that's given. All right, simple labels such as "quote unquote" uncomfortable, "quote unquote" too much. These are arbitrary. They lack any sort of critical thinking that comes to them. There has to be something that's verifiable. And what I'm beginning to see that in here is that to add a little detail here, in my high school there isn't like a popular social center. All right, everyone's in their own groups, and people are categorized within their own groups. Like high school in itself isn't like a feudal society. It's not like that at all. There's no person who's like poor, rich, or monarch. No, everyone's judged in their own groups. The problem is in these friend groups is where the tyranny and arbitrariness is bred in. And what I'm beginning to realize, y'all, is that the obvious thing is we don't have to follow these friend groups. Like John Locke said, y'all, we don't have to tolerate people who give arbitrary rule. We do not have to tolerate them at all. Unfair friend groups that leave others without a rational reason are like absolute monarchies who treat their subjects unfairly, much like many in the past, right? I know that's bold to say, but it's still very similar. Obviously, these are two different things, so I'm just connecting it to a little analogy right here. And I'm saying here too, of course, it's the obvious goal of finding another friend group where you can be treated equally just like anyone else. Everybody has their option. Even for me, I love to do YouTube. I love to present in front of people. Sometimes I do have mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes, all right? There are people that do care. Not all high school groups are genuinely like this. Not all of them. But what I'm beginning to realize, though, is that there's people stuck, all right? The problem is being in a friend group that treats you badly, or maybe being in a friend group where it treats other newcomers badly, all right? But it's your only place, because if you were to leave them, then you'd be lonely. I'm beginning to see that this is a trap that many people fall into. But using the Enlightenment principles here, I'm beginning to realize that breaking off from groups that rule arbitrarily is important, because even though you are alone, you will be alone for a little bit, you're eventually going to find a place where you truly belong. You're going to find a place where people truly value you. That's what I'm beginning to see here. Even though it's hard, I do definitely empathize with a lot of y'all. I know a lot of you guys are trapped in these, let's say, dead fence groups for that matter. You belong somewhere where you're appreciated. You don't belong somewhere where it's arbitrary. As I've been saying this before, we are equal, like John Locke, to have all the three tenets of life, from birth to death, right? Life, liberty, and prosperity. And adding it into high school, y'all, I'm beginning to realize that you don't earn the right to be accepted. You don't earn your rights, your basic liberties, and to be treated like a person in a friend group. Of course, as I said, there's always going to be a temporary adjustment when entering a new friend group. There's always going to be some social friction, but it usually subsides after a little bit. But what I'm beginning to realize right here is that the right to be judged based off of merit, the right to be judged based off of ability and personality, not appearance or superficiality, not what on the outside looks like. I'm beginning to realize that you don't have to earn these rights. You don't earn the right to be a viable friend. And look, using my monarchy idea here, it's up to the friend group. It's up to essentially the monarchy to recognize that its citizens have the power, that its citizens are still people. It's not up to the citizens to prove themselves to the monarchy. It's up to the monarchy to recognize it. And therefore, here, using back into the real life metaphor here, if the friend group cannot recognize the viableness of the given friend, then if the friend knows that they have value, then they should leave. Right? I know that's a little bold here, but as I said again, it helps lead the person to where they truly want to be. What I'm beginning to realize is that friend groups that think these types of rights are earned, I think that they live under a partial illusion. Right? Like John Locke, this one's a little bit radical here. The truth is, rights are never given in the first place. So you don't give rights to people, especially in high school. When it comes to the hierarchy, you don't give rights. No, it doesn't exist like that. But what I'm beginning to realize here is that this is also the same with friend groups out there that do give out arbitrary rejections. When there is no verifiable evidence of wrongness, then to reject someone because you're quote unquote uncomfortable, that's arbitrary. That's a monarchy that's treating their subjects wrong. That's why people deserve to leave rules where it's unfair, even though they will be lonely. It's important, right? What I'm beginning to realize is, as I said, like Locke said, these basic rights, they're given before the government. They're given before any social circle. They're given before anything. It predates anything that relates to the humanities, for that example. Obviously, y'all, my goal here isn't just to remove every single piece of arbitrariness that exists in every friend group. That's already a lot of waste. It's a waste of our time. But what our goal here is that we as people do not have to tolerate friend groups where it's superficial and arbitrary. We can find difference. We can find better. And I'm proposing a solution to this. Writing after John Locke's ideas and the other people of the Enlightenment, I believe that in our mind, we should create a constitutional monarchy. What I mean by that is that everything that we do in the now, the decisions that we do in the now, is made in the question of what will I regret not doing, or what will a group of future versions of me who regretted this or that? Would they want me to do something else, essentially speaking? Pick every future regret of yourself that you have. Imagine a future self of you regretting that you should have not did this, that you should have not did that. Or imagine a future self of you regretting not to have joined this group, even if there was some social friction. As I said, social adjustment does take a little bit of time. All of these types of regrets, I believe that we should put them into a little bit of what we call a parliament. We establish them in our mind. And what I mean by that is that if I'm afraid of joining a friend group, why don't we go to our parliament and essentially create a miniature national assembly and ask them, should I join the friend group? I'm still afraid in real life. What can I do? If the future self of me is saying just join it anyway because they regret not joining the friend group, like if that's a future version of me far away in the future, then I'm going to do it. All right. This form of parliament helps us gain over our everyday fears. So me not wanting to do a video. Right? Imagine this financial decision, for example. When I buy this car when I'm like 25 years old, will the future versions of me who are 50 years old, will the future versions of me who are 26.1 years old, will they regret doing it? Think of it like that. Or let's say, for example, a friend who's in an arbitrary friend group. What I'm beginning to realize there is that if this friend uses this idea of parliament, if I stay in this friend group that treats others arbitrarily, but treats us well, should I leave them to join a new place? What will the future versions of me think if I stay with this friend group or leave and go to find another? That's what I'm beginning to realize right here. I'm following after John Locke's ideas. Shows the solution of a monarchy, a constitutional monarchy where decisions are made by non-linear government. The future versions of ourselves help us to make decisions in the now. If you think about it, social friction is temporary, but regret is forever. Beginning to realize it right here. I'm even going to say that even many people, I'd so much as to say that the friend group that rejected my friend, the friend group that rejected me, I'd say that they have that fear of the new social adjustment, and that's what keeps them partially trapped in their friend groups. And this fear of them that keeps them there is what it will also lead to regret, partially speaking. Obviously, every person and how it will occur is different, but what I'm beginning to see here is that they don't like social friction and having to include such new members. I'm beginning to realize it from there. It doesn't have to be like this. I know that there might be friction, there might be stuff that's going on within our own lives. As I said, every story of rejection is different. But as I'm beginning to realize right here, we don't have to keep it this way. Because eventually, what would my future self say? Would my future self say if I were to stay in this friend group? Would my future self say if I was to do this instead of do that? What would the miniature national assembly that's in our own minds of future versions of us that regret not doing some stuff, what would they say? Now, the friend group that rejected me, I even say the friend group that rejected even my own friends too, I say that they have a part of this fear of joining new people, and it's what partially keeps them trapped in their arbitrary friend groups. Right? Let's say even misinterpretation can also lead to such reasons. And what I'm beginning to see here is that where they fail and fall short, I believe that this new idea of parliament and a miniature national assembly will succeed.